Hello students and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. We'll continue with our economic survey series with the 8th chapter, that is on services. So, as you might already be knowing that the services sector is the sector which provides highest percentage share in India's GDP. Now, the very first table or the graph that we look at is going to show us the increment over the years in the services sector. At the same time, it is also going to show us the decadal change in the services sector, means what has been the change over one decade with respect to the services sector's percentage in total GDP of India. So here is the graph. So if you look at the other countries are also there, this is where India is. So this is where India is. So in India, there is around 50% of India's GDP comes from the services sector. And what has been the decadal change? This has been India's decadal change, which is over 3%, means earlier if it was 47%, now it is 50%. So in the overall share also, the percentage of services sector has increased. When it comes to countries like China's share has increased by around 6%. So that's more of an increase in their share. But in India also there has been a considerable increase. Specifically, what does this mean? This means that if earlier total GDP was 100 and services sector was providing 47 out of it, now it provides 50. So in the last 10 years, the share has increased from 47 to 3%. So 3% increase has been there. So as you can see, this services sector is further encroaching into the overall GDP. Now encroaching may be a negative word, because anyhow, whether the service sector grows, industrial sector grows, or agriculture sector grows, the entire economy grows. In fact, the service sector is one of the fastest growing sector, right, out of the three main sectors. However, having said that, we also want our industrial and agriculture sector to grow, not at the cost of each other. All the three sectors can grow together and create a bigger share of India's GDP. Now, if you look at India's share in global trade with respect to services and merchandise, of course, the global trade is also more in services only. So if you look at India's share in global services export is in blue and merchandise in orange. So you can see the services export has increased from 1.9 to 4.3. So this has more than doubled over the last 2 decades. Whereas that of industry is also exactly doubled over the last 2 decades. So increase is there in both of them. However, there has been more increase over the last 2 decades in the service sector. So presently also, if you see, India is growing at 6.4%. The growth in service sector is quite good. Then the industrial sector, the agricultural sector, that is primary sector, is growing at a slower pace because of its own limitations. Right, the food cannot be, production of food requires some amount of time. It is very difficult to cut that short that time. The land is limited, whereas in industrial sector you can employ more machines and increase the efficiency. In service sector, it is the knowledge sector also, so they can have exponential growth. That is why different sectors grow at different percentages. So if you talk about growth in service sectors GVA, except for 1 year, which I have been consistently saying in the economic survey, the year of COVID, which saw a downfall, every other year you can see there has been consistent growth in the services gross value added. Now, PMI of the service sector. So in the last chapter, you might have seen PMI of the industrial sector, that is the Purchasing Managers Index of the industrial sector, was consistently in the optimistic side. That means more than 50. Now, similar is the case almost completely entirely for services sector. However, there has been one dip. That dip was again coinciding with COVID. If you exclude that COVID year, which can be considered to be an abnormal year as the things were not in our control, you can see that consistently the service sector has remained above 50, that is on the positive side, or as you call it, the optimistic side. Why do you call it optimistic side? Because this means that the market is optimistic with respect to the growth of the services. So whenever Purchasing Managers Index is above 50, it is an indication that the market is optimistic with respect to its perception of this particular sector. And the definition explanation of the PMI Purchasing Managers Index has already been covered in the last chapter on the industries. Now, if you talk about services sectors, exports is a percentage of total gross value added. So if 100 units of value is being added, 20 units is being exported. That means there is a huge amount of export that is done from the services sector. So much so that something which is not there in this graph, which I'll tell you, is that with respect to USA, when you talk about the trade balance, with respect to USA, we have a trade surplus of hundreds of billions of dollars. That is on account of the service sector, because we are exporting huge amount of services to the United States of America, especially the IT and the IT BPS services. All these sectors, our IT engineers, software engineers are working for US companies and generating income, generating revenue. So it is a kind of service that we are exporting out of the country. So the share of it has, is there is a slight downfall over here. You can see this downfall may coincide with the deglobalization, conservative tendencies of the world also. But apart from this, you see that from 19.5 it has increased, and presently it stands at 22%. That means more than 1/5 of the services that India is producing, it is being exported to other countries. Now, tourism industry also comes in, the name is industry, but tourism comes under the services sector. And there have been a huge blow that was given to the tourism sector during the COVID, because what was there? Lockdown. You can't even venture out of the home, let alone venture out of your city, state, or the country. Because of that, tourism has taken a hit, be it domestic tourism or international tourism. So these two are depicted in these two graphs. So if you talk about the international tourism, from close to 2 crore, from 1.75 crore, it came down to 0.7 crore. So there was a loss of more than 50% of tourism in India, which took a hit. But now it is coming back to the pre-COVID era. So now it is correcting itself and coming back to the pre-COVID era. In fact, it is now slightly more than the pre-COVID era. Same is the case when you talk about the domestic tourist visit. So the economic survey also says that it is rebounding to the pre-pandemic level. So before the pandemic level, it was close to 250 crore. Now it has sort of reached the 250 crore mark. So pre-pandemic levels have been reached. Going forward, now we can calculate what further improvement or increase will be there in this tourism sector. Now, coming on to the IT services. So IT services, which plays a major role and provides the chunk of the GVA that is added into the services sector, is also doing well. Total revenue, if you talk about, is in a consistently increasing path. Exports are also increasing. As you talk about the domestic generation, that is also on the rise. So the service sector overall is looking positive. However, we'll discuss one drawback in India's service sector. Even though the performance is so good, probably the economic survey fails to mention that, but we'll mention as to what that problem is, which we need to quickly eradicate. The next thing is about the increasing data usage. Per person data usage is now over 19.3 GB. So every person is consuming per month 19.3 GB of data. That shows the increase in internet penetration, but not necessarily the penetration, because what happens is the 5G technology and all is there. So the less number user or similar amount of user, or maybe with the less number of increase in user, also the data consumption can increase, because 5G, more clarity, HD, you are consuming, each person is consuming more. This also needs to be looked into context, that there is not just the data usage that is being increased, but the number of subscribers, the number of people who can access internet is also consistently increasing in India, right? And it is estimated that for the coming fiscal year, it will end up at 21.2 GB per person per month. I hope that's clear. Now, last but not the least, the state-wise share in services GSVA. The state-wise share in industrial was what? First was Gujarat, then it was Maharashtra. Now, if you look at services, Maharashtra state is still there, so it is the highest. Then comes Karnataka. Karnataka has Bengaluru. Now Bengaluru is considered as India's Silicon Valley, the IT hub. So of course it had to be there. So the second state here is the state of Karnataka. Now if you take into account these two states, it's around 17 and 12. So you have probably close to 30, maybe 17 and 11, so 28%. That means more than 1/4 of the share of GSVA in total comes only from these two states, that is state of Maharashtra and Karnataka. If you include Tamil Nadu also, it becomes more than 1/3 from 3 states and more than 1/4 from just the 2 states. I hope this is absolutely clear. So there is a huge scope, especially from states like Jharkhand, Odisha, you have Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Haryana. All these states need to contribute a lot when it comes to the services, right? Now, so having seen this, this has been the performance. Now, what is that one issue that I'm talking about? That the service sector is doing well, but what is the problem? The problem, or you can say the scope for improvement, is that we are exporting our services. We are exporting our service sector. Our engineers are working for the foreign clients, for the foreign company, for the foreign country. But we are not yet able to create certain big things of our own. For example, ChatGPT. For example, Meta, Alphabet, Google, Apple, all these things, Amazon, for example, cloud services. All these things we are not able to create. ChatGPT was created by USA. Then a cheaper version was created, DeepSeek, by a Chinese startup which is just 1 or 2 years old. But India does not have such thing of its own. And to look at it, it could be so easy for us to develop at least something like a social media platform, because we ourselves are 140 crore people. So if we create something like that, and if a government promotes something like that, imagine it can very easily have millions and millions of followers and subscribers. So something like this, which keeps on with the help of which we keep on reaping the benefits over and over again. If we do something like this in the service sector, probably that should be our next step. Growth needs to be kept on increasing, but at the same time we need to be looking at patented things of our own which can reap benefits continuously. Thank you.